Alright, what's up guys? In today's video, we will be discussing 4 exercises you can do to get bigger shoulders relatively quickly. Of course, I want to go over a couple of disclaimers before we start. One, it takes time to build muscle. In order to build muscle, you still have to be in a caloric surplus and you still have to be eating adequate amounts of protein. If you are not in a caloric surplus and if you are not eating adequate amounts of protein, you may get stronger to an extent, but your muscles will not grow. In order to grow muscles, you have to be doing everything right. You need to be sleeping right. You need to be drinking enough water. You need to be getting enough protein. And above all else, you need to be eating in a caloric surplus. Otherwise, all of these exercises will be futile. They will be pointless, all right? But with that being said, let's get into it. Now, I do want to say that at the end of as I discuss each one of these lifts, I will add videos explaining how to do the lifts with voiceovers, okay? So I'll give you guys a breakdown guide on how to properly do them, or rather on how to optimally do them in order to grow your muscles, your shoulders as quickly as possible. Because you'll see a lot of videos, on Instagram or YouTube comment section saying, oh, that rep was a half rep, or that wasn't a full rep, when in reality, they're actually doing the lift perfectly, okay? Whenever you're doing these lifts, you have to do them intentionally, all right? You have to learn how to properly contract and isolate certain muscles, and that requires you to go a certain range of motion, okay? Because once you go past a certain range of motion when doing certain exercises, you're no longer contracting the specific muscle you intend to train, okay? So for example, when you're doing side lateral raises with dumbbell shoulders, you want to do them a specific way to minimize the amount of trap engagement you have. Because if I want to get bigger traps, or if you want to get bigger traps, you can literally go and do 10 exercises that isolate your traps, okay? Whenever you're doing these exercises, you want to focus on mind-muscle connection and doing them in such a way to where you're effectively only contracting the shoulders, all right? This is very important, okay? I made a video on mind-muscle connection. I'll drop that in the link below. But these are some very important disclaimers. Again, before we get started, I just have to reiterate this one more time, okay? Whenever you're bodybuilding, whenever you're trying to build muscle, you want to, in order to do this as quickly as possible, and I've had an insane transformation, okay? I've been doing this for 8 years. I got huge shoulders in just 16 months. If you want to do this as quickly as possible, you need to focus on learning how to specifically contract the muscle you are training during the exercise, okay? So again, when you're doing something like side lateral raises, or when you're training a specific muscle, you want to make sure you're contracting that muscle only, or effectively that muscle only, because technically it is impossible to only contract one muscle. But you effectively want to get to the point to where you're only using 99% of the intended muscle, or excuse me, where you're only contracting 99% of the intended muscle during an exercise. With that being said, let's get into it. Step 1, you have side lateral raises, okay? So I'll drop a video for side lateral raises, but before I drop the video, I highly recommend you do shoulders. I recommend you do all these exercises twice a week. So you can do a heavy shoulder day and a high volume shoulder day. Okay, on the heavy shoulder day, I recommend going from 4 to anywhere to 12 reps, and after you get to 12 reps or so, you can increase the weight by 5 or 2.5 pounds, depending on the dumbbells your gym has. And on the second day, the high volume day, I'd recommend drop sets. But not only drop sets, I'd recommend triple drop sets. Now, drop sets are when you do an exercise and you stop and you immediately do the same exercise, but you do it with a lower weight. So let's say you do side lateral raises with 20-pound dumbbells, 5 reps. You're gonna stop. You're gonna do side lateral raises, 15-pound dumbbells with 6 reps. Okay, you're gonna a triple drop set. You drop down to like 12.5 or 12 pounds. You immediately stop after 15. You do 7 reps of 12. So you do like 20 pounds, you do 5 reps at 20 pounds, 6 reps at 15 pounds, and 7 reps at 12 pounds. Okay, that's what a drop set is. The purpose of drop sets are it's hypertrophy. It allows you to get more volume in. Okay, and hypertrophy is very important for building muscle, so I highly recommend drop sets. Okay, and here's a video of me doing a triple drop set of side lateral raises. As you can see, I'm bent forward, and I'm bent forward and my elbows are turned inward. So the purpose of bending forward is to isolate the shoulders and minimize the trap engagement. So you want to bend forward, and you don't actually want to lift to your side, but you kind of want to lift at like a almost 60-degree angle to your body. This is how you do them perfectly, all right? So that's how you do side lateral raises with perfect form. As you can see, I'm engaging no muscle other than my shoulders, all right? Minimizing traps. Step 2 is the reverse pec deck. And if y'all don't know, the reverse pec deck is just the machine where you do chest flies, but it's in reverse. So you're training shoulders this way. I'll drop a link to it. But again, I highly recommend having a high volume day and a drop set day for that. And so a drop set day, you would choose a weight, I don't know, like maybe 70 pounds. Right now I'm doing 70 pounds, about 7 reps. I'll drop down to 10 pounds. I'll do 60 pounds, 8 reps. So just do, you can drop set, you can do a triple drop set, it doesn't matter. But I highly recommend that exercise. Reverse pec that, it's very good. Alright, so here we have the reverse pec deck machine. As you guys notice, I'll arch my back, and the purpose of arching my back is to best isolate the rear delts and to minimize trap engagement. So when you're doing these, you don't want to extend back too far, because if you go back too far, you will start engaging your traps, and you don't want to do that. Number 3, I recommend seated or standing rear delt dumbbell flies. I'll drop a video of that, but again, I recommend doing drop sets for those. These are also very important, okay? Alright, here we have standing rear delt dumbbell flies. Okay, when you do these, you want to bend forward. And notice how I'm not extending too far out with my arms. And that's because I want to isolate the rear delts. I don't want to engage any traps. So with this movement, I'm barely engaging my traps. Now, if you notice something, this is also very important and something I probably should have mentioned at the first. In order to get massive shoulders, you have to train all 3 heads of your shoulder. So your shoulder has a front head, a side head, and a rear head, okay? And side lateral raises targets your side of the shoulders and a little bit of your front. Reverse pec deck flies or reverse pec deck machine flies, they target your rear delt. And your rear delt dumbbell flies, they also target your rear delt, which is in the back of your shoulder. Now, I have so many rear delt exercises on here because there are a lot of they're a very small muscle, and they're a muscle that is often neglected by people who are new to the gym because they just don't know better. In order to have full round 3-dimensional looking shoulders, right? In order to have boulder shoulders, you have to train all 3 heads of their shoulder. And a lot of guys, you know, they have the front, and they have the side head developed. They don't have a rear head developed. So that's why you want to emphasize doing these exercises, especially a drop set, so you can either play catch up, or you can just develop a well-developed, well-rounded shoulder in the beginning stages, which is what I would recommend, because it's going to save you a lot of time. All right, and again, this is about getting massive shoulders as quickly as possible. All right, and step 4, you have rope face pulls. Again, that works your rear delts as well. You can do drop sets. Again, all these exercises, I recommend a heavy day, and I'd recommend a high volume day. Now, I didn't discuss any front shoulder exercises, and that's because if you're training chest, you're effectively always training your shoulders as well. Even though I just told you guys, whenever you're doing an exercise, you want to focus on properly or almost entirely contracting that specific muscle you're training. So when you're training chest, for example, you want to focus on properly isolating that muscle to where it's effectively the only muscle you feel. But again, it's effective. It's effective, okay? It's not technical. You won't, it's virtually impossible to only use one muscle when doing an exercise, all right? So, but anyways, whenever you're doing something like a barbell bench press, any sort of push movement, you're engaging your front shoulders, and your front shoulders are also a super small muscle. But again, if you're doing any sort of pressing, especially bench press, dumbbell bench press, incline dumbbell bench press, you're going to get bigger front shoulders. All right, your front shoulders are at least of your worries. And another reason I didn't include any front shoulder exercises is because it's very easy to injure the front of your shoulders, right? There's literature on this explaining why. I don't know the science behind it, but when I was a beginning lifter training front delts, my shoulders would get injured or impinged all the time, and that's because whenever you're doing any front lateral movements, it's just super easy to impinge your shoulder and get injured. So I would actually actively avoid doing any exercises that solely focus on training your front delts. So pretty much any front raises, I would highly encourage you guys not to do those. It is very easy to get injured doing those. I also, don't recommend doing these. Super easy to get injured doing those. take it for someone who's been doing it for 8 years. It's easy to get injured. And that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe. Also, I offer one-on-one coaching, how to bodybuild, how to get jacked, how to bodybuild and run long distances concurrently, how to get shredded. I'll do all that stuff. The link to coaching is in the bio, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.